Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Just also to let you know, we are also live on YouTube on one of those two cameras. So also welcome everyone that is watching us online. So this is the third event of the Quantum Itineraries Week that we are having here in Cyprus at the Artos House. So first of all, I would like to thank Achilleas again for hosting, allowing us to have and to use this incredible space here in the city center. And I would also very much like to thank Moth for sponsoring these events, and also for the support of DESI and the Cyprus Institute, and for all the collaborations that span more than 2 years that led to this event. Okay, so for now we have been making some sounds, some noise, some organized sound, and we also claim that we are using quantum algorithms and quantum algorithmic tools for music in these cases, but maybe it's not that clear for some people what kind of technologies, or from where this kind of technologies come from. They are usually a collaboration between research, academia, and the industry. And in this case, in this evening, we are going to have a Moth represented by Harry, and I was also like to call or maybe later, yes, later, okay, Maria and Astrid, to talk a little bit about the tools and the research that they have been developing at Moth to also enable artists like us to perform live for you. So without further ado, let's just give a hand to Harry, and we can start the showcase.
Thank you, Paolo. Can everyone hear me okay from this microphone? I mean, you can probably hear me from my voice anyway. Yes, oh, of course, right. And can we get the slides on screen? Okay, well, while we wait for that to load, thank you, Paolo, for the very kind introduction there. Thank you all for coming tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, so some of this will be, already knowledge to you, but to others who are just hearing about Moth for the first time and hearing about quantum music, quantum creativity, welcome. So before I introduce Astrid and Maria, who are my colleagues at Moth and great researchers in the field of quantum and creativity, I'm just going to provide a bit of an introduction to Moth, what we do, and some of the thinking behind our organization, and a bit of an origin story, because a lot of you, like I said, will be familiar with who we are. A lot of you will have worked with us in some capacity before, but I'm not sure if all of you know how we came to be and where we are today. So Moth is a quantum technology company. We're a startup, and we are developing applications of quantum computing for the creative industries, which we broadly define as music, gaming, and visual media, but of course, which extends into design, into film, and many more domains of creativity. So, a little bit about me to kick us off. I'm not a quantum physicist by training. I studied maths and philosophy, and I've been surprised at how much that has actually primed me for being able to start grappling with the fundamentals of quantum. But I'm very lucky to have many people within Moth who are far better at explaining quantum phenomena and actually doing the research than I am. So my background is in the creative industries and cultural sectors. I founded and directed an art gallery in London just before starting with Moth, and worked with a number of cultural institutions and art foundations, just like Artos House, who are kindly hosting us here today. I'm based in London and operate out of our Somerset House office. Those of you who are familiar with London may know Somerset House. Their tagline is the home for cultural innovation. So we feel very comfortable there. So before I dive into our story, I want to contextualize the present day with quantum by touching on the fact that it is 100 years next year since the birth of quantum mechanics. And that is a somewhat arbitrary 100-year mark. You could describe it as earlier than that. You could describe it as later than that. But the United Nations and many other global partners have come together to declare it 100 years with Heisenberg's first discoveries and experiments in 1925 marking the 100-year mark. Now, for the last 100 years, quantum mechanics has gone from being a fringe theory of the governance of the universe to something that is broadly accepted as the theory for how our universe works, especially at that microscopic level. Now, in those 100 years, we've seen quantum mechanics disseminate throughout society and become something that is understood a little bit better than it probably was in 1925 by the broader public. But there is still a real challenge in getting these ideas to stick. And we still haven't truly seen quantum mechanics and quantum physics percolate throughout culture and throughout society. So next year will be a really big moment in the quantum industry, but also for researchers and physicists around the world. Now, quantum computing in parallel to this is something that for a very long time existed in the figment of many researchers' imaginations. It was in the early 1980s that Richard Feynman first speculated on this idea of a quantum-based computing system and computing architecture, describing conventional computers, those that we hold in our pockets, I'm using here for the presentation, but that have ultimately the same architecture if we trace it all the way back to the first computers in the 40s and 50s. He speculated that this kind of architecture would never be able to run simulations that are simulating the natural world or natural processes, natural systems, and described a quantum computer as something that would be required to reach those new heights of computation. Now, 40 odd years later, we are now seeing quantum hardware progress to a point where it is actually able to achieve unsimulatable results, and further milestones are just round the corner. I mean, this article I've just pulled onto the screen on the right is from just 3 days ago. Quantinium's research team achieving the first topological qubit. And this is a major milestone, but it is one of many major milestones that are being broken month on month. So comparing the position of quantum computing to even 5 years ago, right now we are at a very exciting time, and it's clear that these computers will, at some point, very soon, become integrated into many major industries. Now, those of you who are working in research in quantum and have read the news and seen the word quantum pop up, you probably know that the areas of application that are being explored right now are predominantly in traditional industries and areas of application such as chemistry, cybersecurity. Pharmaceutical companies are investing billions into quantum computing, and world governments are as well. But actually, we thought when we first came across and first started incubating the idea of Moth, we realized that most major new frontier technologies mature first in creative applications, in the creative industries. And actually, when you look back throughout history, there has always been this really strong relationship between the frontiers of science, the frontiers of technology, and the frontiers of arts and culture. I've chosen two very different examples here, but there are many, many more I could have chosen. On the left, I have Filippo Brunelleschi's oil paintings, where we saw the sort of pioneering steps towards using linear perspective in the depiction of in image making, in painting, in the 1400s. Now, Brunelleschi was, in that sense, really, adopting the frontier ideas in science and mathematics and integrating that into his art practice. And in the Renaissance period, to be a painter, and I think we were talking about this with some of the other contributors to this week's festival last night, to be a painter, you had to be a chemist as well. You had to have a deep understanding of chemistry in order to mix the pigments for your oil paintings. So art and science have been interlinked in that way, and that's just one of many examples. Another example I often like to bring up is Roger Penrose and his relationship with Escher. The two of them exchanging ideas throughout their careers and actually leading to discoveries and progress in both of their respective practices. Now, on the right, I have an image from Holly Herndon, who's a contemporary artist working in music and in visual media. She is probably one of the earliest artists I ever came across who was working with machine learning in her practice. And I may talk a bit more about Holly Herndon later on in the presentation, but many of you will probably remember the first publicly accessible applications of machine learning that you came across, not being with ChatGPT or other more industrial, focused applications, but probably something like an image generator in 2017, 2018, or some of those early experiments in AI applications to music. And this is a common theme, and it's something at Moth we really believe is integral to developing new technologies for creativity, but also new technologies in general, and fostering this relationship across art, culture, science, and technology is critical to our mission. So, looking back at another example of pioneers in creative practice being pioneers in technological research and development, I want to play you two pieces of early computer music that many of you will probably be familiar with. The first is Le Jarenhiller and Leonard Isaacson in 1956, arguably the first ever computer music composed by a classical computer and then played by a string quartet. So just a quick clip there. And here is Max Matthews' piece, The Silver Scale. Two very different pieces of early computer music. And you may be familiar with Bell Labs, where a lot of these early experiments in creative practices and computing were sort of first incubated. Now, today, it's almost incomprehensible to imagine music without computers, except for the rare cases where Carl Janssen is playing a local Cypriot instrument to us, and we're all in person sat around a fire. Most instances of listening to music are at some point interacting with computers, either in the production of the music, digital instruments, the distribution through things like Spotify, and even the designing of new instruments. It is almost impossible to imagine the contemporary musical setting without computers playing a significant role. But 1957 and 1956 are not that long ago, really. And for those of you who attended the concert last night and are attending the concert tonight, it is pretty clear that what's going on here in Cyprus and in many other places around the world right now, we are in a very similar early pioneer phase to the phase where Bell Labs were, and Max Matthews and Leonard Isaacson were pioneering these new applications of computers. In fact, the technology itself has an uncanny resemblance to those early days with temperature-controlled large computers that take up the size of a room and require a degree in plumbing to operate. And two of our pioneers at Moth, in fact, the two people who got us started in the first place, are Eduardo Miranda and Bob Kuka. Bob Kuka is the chief scientist at Quantinuum, one of the largest, if not the largest, quantum computing company in the world. And Eduardo Miranda, many of you will be familiar with, is the director of the Computer Music Centre at Plymouth University and is a contemporary classical composer himself. And the two of them, in 2021, worked together on a paper that caught our attention, and that was a quantum natural language processing approach to musical intelligence. So in 2021, and actually I think it was early 2022 when I was first introduced to Bob and Eduardo, I was under the impression that quantum computers were, part of sci-fi and far, far away from, at least decades away from being actual real computers with utility. But here were two musicians in their own right, two researchers in their own right, using a quantum computer in musical composition. And it completely transformed my understanding and awareness of where the technology was at and what was going on. And so we continued to work with Eduardo in 2022 and up until now, and really advance at Moth our experiments in quantum computer music. And we were aware that it wasn't just Eduardo, but actually a whole scene of musicians all around the world who were exploring quantum computer music and also quantum mechanics in the domain of music, from Reiko Yamada at ICFO in Barcelona to Spencer Topel, who was one of the first Yale Quantum Institute residents, and where he used qubits to synthesize music. We had Rakat B, who we became aware of more recently, and who now works at Moth, who was fascinated by quantum mechanics and encoding musical logic in quantum mechanical systems. He's actually just released this book, Quantum Mechanics and Avant-Garde Music. I think it just came out a couple of weeks ago. Maybe someone lucky in the audience can receive this copy if I throw it out to you at the end of this talk. But there was a whole scene of musicians and experimental musicians and researchers driving this field forwards. And in 2022, at the end of 2022, we supported Eduardo Miranda in publishing this book with Springer, featuring many papers by people who've been here in Cyprus today, that really was a statement for the quantum computing industry that here is a new field of application, and that's music. And it isn't just an experimental composer here or there, but actually a coherent group of researchers and contemporary composers and musicians experimenting with this new technology. And it wasn't just music. It was also gaming, it was visual art, it was all kinds of creative domains that, as we peeled back more layers, we discovered people all over the world were exploring this. So on the left, we have James Wooten, who since 2016 or 17 has been experimenting with quantum computing approaches to generating games and using them in the domain of gaming. There was Russell Huffman, working at IBM at the time, who was leading a whole scene of artists in the United States and actually teaching a course at the New School, running exhibitions in New York and so on. And a little further outside of quantum computing, but still in the realm of quantum, there was Rafiq Anadol, one of the biggest artists in the world right now, who back in 2018 had visualized some quantum data from a lab experiment and showcased it at, I believe, MoMA, as well as Ryoji Ikeda, one of my favorite audiovisual artists, who back in 2012, I believe, had explored the quantum phenomena of superposition in a live performance setting. Roman Lipsky as well, I should shout out, who was working with James Wooten on developing quantum computing methods to image creation. So with all of this work going on around the world by researchers and artists, we started to make our first forays into applications and experiments, and we built a tool called Actius. It was formerly known as QSynth, and we built that with Pete Thomas, Eduardo, Miranda, and support from a lot of the people at Plymouth. And we also developed the quantum audio package with support from Paolo, who was the first to actually publish a paper on this topic. And it's been a great honor over the last couple of years to work with all of the amazing researchers, like I say, many of whom are here today, and support that research and development in building applications that we can now, I'm proud to say, give to any musician to start incorporating into their creative practice. There's a photo here of us showcasing Actius and quantum audio at Sonar Festival this year. And what we started noticing is that actually public audiences and the cultural sectors in general were demonstrating a real demand and interest and appetite to start learning about quantum computer music, quantum creativity, and to start actually programming performances of quantum music into their programs, be that Sonar Festival, the Future Culture Summit in Aulula. And this is a photo from the Goethe Institute at the end of 2022 for the book launch of that quantum computer music book, where we had Brian Eno and Peter Gabriel turn up and show interest in the field of quantum computer music. So we spent the last couple of years really finding our feet in this space, developing applications and driving the field forward with the help of all the amazing people in this ecosystem. And one of the things we're very, very proud of doing is bringing new artists into the field, those who maybe have practices in classical machine learning or a fascination for quantum mechanics. On the left there, Ilar, who we've worked with for over a year now, giving early access to the tools, and Voldemars, who we recently hosted a festival in Riga with, who's been fascinated by quantum mechanics and ambisonic sound for a long time. Finally, not so long ago, we hosted a quantum rave in London with a bunch of new artists who had, prior to reaching out to us, never actually interacted with quantum mechanics or quantum computing in any way. So we're very proud and excited to continue bringing new artists into the fold and building this ecosystem. Now, earlier this year, things started really taking off. We opened our office in Somerset House after we closed a round of funding and were able to go full-time on Moth. We opened an office in Switzerland when we hired James Wooten, who I mentioned a moment ago, who joined our team as chief scientist. Spencer Topel, also in that photo up there on the right, who I mentioned a moment ago as the Yale Quantum Institute resident, is now our CTO. And we're very proud that our team has grown to about, I think, 15 people now, some of whom are part-time. But we've really assembled an incredible team of people who've been pioneers in this field for many years. We also, just a couple of months ago, were granted some funding by the Swiss government to explore applications or generative applications on spin qubit devices. So things started really taking off, particularly in the last 6 months. And that's what brings us to today. We're focused on music, gaming, visual media. As you've heard up until now, one of our main focuses has been music. But in the last few months alone, we've really built out our developments into gaming and into visual media. And Astrid will talk a bit about that in her presentation. And since James joining as chief scientist, we've really honed in our research focus around foundational algorithms for generative technologies and applications across these domains and industries. So looking forward, next year is the year of quantum. We are currently inundated with incredible opportunities to take quantum to public audiences, program performances and exhibitions. And I think it's going to be a really exciting moment for industry, for researchers, and for the general public to get closer to this technology and to these ideas in quantum physics. We are going to be ramping up our number of collaborations with artists and really trying to take this to the next level, bringing artists in-house and developing not just artworks and performances and compositions, but also develop tools with artists as well. We're partnering with academic institutions and creative industries companies. Unfortunately, I can't share too much about that right now, but it's been an incredibly exciting last couple of months with the partnerships we've got lined up. And we're releasing our first products and applications, really releasing these for many artists and consumers to actually enjoy their first interactions with quantum computers. And of course, and it's important I say this here in Cyprus, in this amazing event, we are really excited to be working with all the amazing people in this ecosystem and continue collaborating at this stage in quantum creativity's trajectory. Now, before I pass on to Maria and Astrid, I want to return to a point I made right at the beginning of the talk, which is artist-led innovation. It's a very important part of what Moth does, and it's a key part of my role as Chief Creative Officer. I've put up here this quote from Stephen Wilson, who was part of the Xerox PARC Artist in Residency program that became quite infamous in the 1970s, I believe. That artists play a key role in the development of new technologies. They're not only the first users, often, of new technologies, as I mentioned, but they also play a role in commentating on how these technologies can be used and what their role is in broader society. And of course, particularly today, with greater access to technical tools and a lot of resources online, you're seeing the emergence of more technical artists now who are able to actually build the tools themselves. And to talk a bit more on some of these points, I think it's worth mentioning, and I've used the example here of John Rathman, who's a famous Canadian artist, who speaks quite a lot about in his work the fact that artists are able to engage with new technologies when those technologies are not fully developed, or when those technologies have inherent flaws or limitations or errors. And actually that because artists work on a completely different system of value to, say, a cybersecurity company or a pharmaceutical company, artists are actually not only able to, but really want to engage with new technologies, and in some cases exploit the flaws and errors and expose those flaws and errors as an interesting kind of conceptual basis for their practice. This is from his series Transhumanism, where he used early stage generative image models, GAN-based image models, to create these quite creepy images. I've chosen one of the less creepy ones in this presentation. But for him, there's something fundamentally more interesting about an imperfect image model, something that has errors and creates these strange artifacts within the composition. Not only does it tell us something about the state of the technology at the time, exposing its limitations and exploring those on a conceptual level, but arguably from an aesthetic perspective, there's something really uncanny and interesting there to explore. And it's not just with recent image generation models, but with many other technologies, early computers, and I believe quantum computers today, with the errors and limitations that they have. This can be an exciting thing for an artist. Now, of course, as well, artists are able to envision and actually innovate applications that would otherwise be overlooked. So I've used two examples here, quite related. One is the Roland 808 that was made from actually discontinued parts, where there were, I believe it was some loose valves that led to the distinct 808 sound that is loved and used throughout music culture today across genres. And you might have thought, if you were Roland at the time, well, we shouldn't make a drum machine that doesn't sound like a drum, that doesn't mimic a drum. But actually, this fault and the exploitation of that fault and this strange device by artists led to an entirely new aesthetic for beat making and drum making. And Jay Diller, a similar reference here, had a very strange way of using a drum machine that completely transformed the way that producers make music today. rather than try and mimic, again, the way that a drum might sound or drum patterns might usually sound, he opted for different aesthetics and styles and often exploited the kind of strange properties that could be found by using a drum machine and cutting samples off and distorting them in a way that has completely transformed, since his early work in the late 90s and early noughties, completely transformed music today, you could argue. And of course, I mentioned it a moment ago, but leading public discourse is something it's particularly important to Moth, that artists have this ability to engage with public audiences and, on the one hand, disseminate knowledge and communicate really complex ideas through unconventional mediums and forms. Over here is from a performance at Ars Electronica that Marios Christodoulou, who was here last night, reminded me of. He worked on the project, and it was capturing quantum mechanical phenomenon through a dance installation, and of course these kinds of explorations into complex ideas and depictions of complex ideas can resonate with public audiences in a way that other more common forms of communication often struggle to connect. And then on the other side, it's interrogating the role of technology in society, and actually not just interrogating and leading discourse, but actually leading action. I mentioned Holly Herndon earlier. She founded, with her partner Matt Dryhurst, Spawning AI, which is a platform where you can find out whether whether your data has been used in training data sets, and you can actually use the tool to start lobbying to remove your data. And as an artist herself, she thought this was a critical thing at this stage, where there have been so many cases of stolen data sets and artists not being asked to have their work used in training models. And increasingly so today, we're seeing a new kind of artist emerge, a post-disciplinary artist who is not only creating artworks, but creating tools where, in fact, the tool itself is the artwork, if you like, creating experiences. With Rafiq Anadol, he's not just an artist, and whether you like his work or not, it's admirable that he's gone on to start his own cultural institution, because he realized that the legacy cultural institutions that he was often operating within were not able to serve him in the same way, and that he was providing more value to them than they were to him. So he's founded Datalands. And Holly Herndon, in this case, actually starting up an applications company as an artist to solve a problem that artists were facing. And we're seeing this kind of new breed of artist emerge. And I could talk for hours on this, so I'll move on now. But I think it's a fascinating moment, particularly in the art and technology space. Now, I'm going to round out by just leaving these two quotes on the screen that have been an influence on my thinking and the thinking within Moth about the artist's role in society. I'll give you a moment to just read those. So, before I pass over to Astrid and Maria, I want to share a few questions that have been going about in my mind, and questions that we're asking within Moth. Perhaps we can revisit, depending on time, at the end of the other two presentations, that will go into some more of the technical details of what we've been working on, and show you these tools. But perhaps after those presentations, we can revisit these questions, or indeed we can discuss these afterwards over a beer. But thank you so much for listening, and please give Maria a warm welcome onto stage as she showcases some of our music production tools and research. just while you're setting that up. Eduardo Miranda recently released this album using quantum music production tools, some of which were sort of early versions of what we've developed within Moth. If you'd like to get a copy or learn more about what he's working on, please do come up to me afterwards. The album's called Cubism, and is available, I believe, on online at Bandcamp, and physical copies are also available, so please do reach out. And likewise for Rakat B. Abdusagin's book, which has just recently come out.
Okay. Should I do it? Oh.
Yeah, good.
Okay. I have to keep close to the microphone, is that right? Sit down? I don't want to sit down. Okay. Can I be properly heard from here? Okay. Great. Amazing. So welcome everyone. I am Maria. And today I'm going to be talking about quantum music tools and audio encoding schemes. As part of the Moth team, I am currently a research scientist at Moth Quantum. So first of all, who am I? Well, I'm a physicist, and I have a keen interest in applying science and technology for music and creative purposes. I've always had like this obsession with applying everything I know from science in music and in general for creative purposes. So it's always been something I've been very passionate about. I am a musician as well, not only a physicist. You can see me here, for example, at the Sonar Festival. I am also playing with Paula on that picture on the left. So yeah, I've been applying physics to music for a while now, and I really love it. This is my storyline so that you can have it organized in your mind. I studied a bachelor in physics in Universidad Complutense de Madrid. From there, I jumped into a master's in Barcelona. I literally wrote on Google Physics plus Music Master's Program, and this popped up. There happened to be a very nice program directed by Xavier Serra and the Music Technology Group in Barcelona. It's a very strong research group in music technology, and I am very grateful that I had the opportunity to be part of it. And I completed a master's there in sound and music computing within the Music Technology Group. This was just a few months ago, so at the moment I moved to Plymouth, to a small town in the United Kingdom called Plymouth. And there's a university there where Eduardo Miranda directs the ICCMR tool, which is a computer music research group. I studied a PhD in quantum computing in the arts, music and humanities. And as well as doing a PhD there, I am also sponsored and hired by Moth Quantum, part-time as a research scientist, as I already said. So now that you know a little bit about me, I want to briefly introduce the contents of my presentation. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the quantum computer music field. I know many of us already know about this field already, but it's never a bad thing to remind us why are we doing this. I also want to briefly tell you the things that I've been going on, that I have been doing on quantum computer music before starting my PhD. And then I'm going to explain two tools that we are currently developing and improving within the Moth group, which are the Actias synthesizer and the quantum audio package. So first of all, what is quantum computer music? Well, by the way, I love this picture from Paulo's thesis. Thank you, Paulo, for providing these amazing pictures that I always use very often. So quantum computer music is a field that uses quantum computers to create music, and what's special about quantum computers is that they exploit the properties in quantum mechanics, the qubits in quantum mechanics, in quantum computing. So first we had analog sound, and from there we jumped into classical digital sound by encoding audio as bits in a classical computer. Now we're gonna go a step forward, and that's gonna be quantum computers, which use this new unit of information that we call qubit, which has some properties that are specific from the quantum mechanics world and are different from the classical bits that we find in classical computing. So just to review on this concept, to sum it up, the quantum computer music field is a research field that exploits any possible quantum computing application in music, and this can be composing, developing instruments, playing live, whatever you can think of. Why quantum computer music? This is one of my favorite topics. So first of all, I believe that quantum computing is a form of science at the quantum computing in music is a form of science at the service of art, because it's a new way to explore art and to make music. Why is that? Because the moment you throw musicians and artists a tool that has different methods or different ideas, this is gonna bring up new methodologies, new processes, and thus new art. Art is not only about the artist, it's not only about the audience, it's not only about the methods, it's about them all together. And I believe that quantum computing really gives a new insight into this process of making art through science. Second motivation is that we can sonify physics and we can sonify science using music. And this is also very powerful. I have experienced myself how by trying to sonify things and trying to mine them through art, I get to understand them better. I get closer to mathematics and physics very often through art, and this is very powerful. That is what brings me also to the last motivation for quantum computer music, which is didactic purposes. Music is very intuitive, very warm, very close to people, okay? And I have seen how people that didn't know at all about qubits or physics, I saw them understanding what physics is about just because they understood my instruments or just because they understood quantum computer music. This is very powerful. Physicists tend to be this obscure group of people that seem very weird from the outside sometimes. And I want to change that. I think physics can be beautiful and very much closer to people if we use art to do so. So, turns out that the quantum computer music field has a quite solid community already, and I'm very proud and glad about this. So there have been plenty of conferences, concerts, events around the world. This is great. And we are building a scientific community. There's already books, there's already papers, there's an international exchange of ideas. So, now that I have introduced a little bit the quantum computer music field, I want to talk about my previous work on quantum computer music before starting my PhD. So I can divide it mainly into 3 blocks. I first developed a quantum step sequencer, which was a very simple instrument that mapped into a launchpad or a keyboard quantum computing circuits and qubits, and I manipulated those to create music, to generate music live with it. My second project in quantum computer music has been a master thesis on quantum random walks in rhythm spaces. I basically draw and sonified quantum random trajectories into a rhythm spaces tool. A rhythm space is a multidimensional music space. So I believe this to be very interesting because multidimensional music space can be anything. It doesn't necessarily need to be about rhythm. It can be any sort of timbre multidimensional space, vocal space, guitar space. So I applied it in rhythm spaces, but it could be anything. And I am really excited about this aspect of my thesis, which, by the way, was supervised by Carl Jansen as well, not only by Universitat Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona. And the last stage, or the last block of work that I have done on quantum computer music have been the collaborations with many people from different parts of the world. I worked with Desi on the variational quantum harmonizer, with Carl, with Paulo, with Ariana. I worked for the ICCMR team as well, helping with the CTM performance and the QCM. ICCMR is the group in Plymouth, by the way, directed by Eduardo. And I was also here in Cyprus a few months ago giving a lecture on quantum computer music in the arts as well. So let's dive now into the tools that we are developing in Moth Quantum at the moment. I'm going to be talking, as I already introduced, about Actius, which is a synthesizer, and about the quantum audio package. Actius was previously known as the Q1 synth, and it was developed at the University of Plymouth, and now we are bringing it a little bit forward within Moth. This is basically a synthesizer and a sound controller that is inspired by quantum computing concepts and ideas, and it can be connected to real hardware. So essentially, we use a Bloch sphere to represent a qubit, and the idea is that using the synthesizer, you can rotate the qubit sphere, you can apply operations on the qubit sphere. You can also map the different parameters from the sphere. You can patch them to different parameters within the synthesizer. You can choose a preset and then connect and patch the sphere however you want to these parameters within the synthesizer. So in essence, when you are rotating this sphere, you are rotating a qubit and you're sonifying a qubit. And I believe this concept to be very beautiful. Not only that, you can actually connect the active synthesizer to an actual computer. So if we think about it, when you are using, we typically use a ring so that it is, instead of moving the sphere with your mouse, we use a ring and then you can rotate it with gestures. And this is great because it feels like you're truly rotating the qubit when you are connected remotely to an actual quantum computer. This is beautiful. I mean, from a creative point of view, I find this to be very interesting and very inspiring. Not only you can be connected to real hardware using one sphere, but you can have multiple spheres. So let's say you have several active synthesizers and you build circuits that connect them. Then you can rotate several spheres at once, and you can bring entanglement into the game, and you can do that actually connecting to real hardware. So you can add many layers of complexity to this and many concepts that you can explore. The active synthesizer has been already used by many artists. Over 10 artists have collaborated with us already, right, Harry? So we have many artists out there using Actias already, and I want to play now some of the Instagram posts that we have about artists using Actias. Let me go into Instagram now. Our Instagram is Moth Quantum, so if you want to watch more content afterwards there, you surely can. So first I want to show you how the active synthesizer can sound. Why isn't the screen working? Okay. Okay, well, there should be an image on the screen right now. For some reason, it is not working. Let me check if it... Okay. Okay, so you can hear the cues, the active synthesizer making sound at the moment. Yeah, this is where we're Okay, great. This is weird. It can be seen.
Did duplicate extended screen? Extended screen also.
Yeah, let as I said, you can patch the parameters in the sphere in whatever way you want to the sound generation. And this is just a basic example. I can show you now some artists using Actias. For example, we have Paper Tape here. I really like how he uses the Actias synthesizer. So that was one example. We have also Jerry Cobb here using the active synthesizer as well. Okay, so now that we know what Arceus is and we have seen a couple videos on it, let's jump into quantum audio. Where's the arrow? Oh, here. Okay. So now I'm going to present the second tool, which is the quantum audio tool. I have to go to the slide. Here it is. So, the quantum audio package. This is actually one of the most important topics regarding my PhD thesis as well. The quantum audio package is a Python module for encoding and decoding audio signals as quantum states. It's open source, you can download it on your computers. And let's understand a little bit first how audio is typically encoded using classical computers first. So when you have an audio, okay, you typically crop it, you cut it into little pieces that we call samples. And each sample has associated a tuple of values, which are the amplitude and the time. Each little sample has two tags, the amplitude and the time. That's how we crop the audio. Classically, we encode this using bits, but the question here is, what can we do with qubits? Like, can we encode this amplitude and time samples of the audio into qubits? And the answer is yes, we can. So yeah, just have in mind that an audio array is basically a structure like this. Time samples with amplitudes that correspond to it. And we index over the little number, the little sub-index. So Eduardo and Paulo, back in the University of Plymouth, thought about how to use qubits to encode audio, and they came out with different schemes that you could use. For example, there's this scheme which is called the quantum lattice indexing, in which you are composing the time tags as qubits for encoding audio. And there's this other type of encoding, which is called a simple superposition indexing, in which instead of composing qubits with time tags, what we do instead is adding, is superposing the time tags from samples as a superposition of qubits, as you can see here. The schemes that we are going to be seeing now, and the ones that Paulo and Eduardo further developed in the thesis that we are working on now and bringing forward, is the simple superposition indexing. So this is the scheme that we are going to be using, and the one that we are going to be talking about today. So in the superposition indexing, different encodings can be created. So within within the superposition indexing, we can have different approaches and different times of dealing with the information as well. So, for example, the first approach that we can take is the quantum probability amplitude modulation scheme. In this scheme, what we do is we simply map the amplitudes. So remember that the times were encoded in here with this index, which we are under the superposition indexing. If we map the amplitudes to the amplitudes of the qubits themselves, then we are encoding through a superposition, a simple superposition, both the amplitude and the times, and thus the entire audio arrays. So this is one possibility, and we call it the probability amplitude modulation because we are mapping directly the amplitude from the audio to the probability amplitudes for the qubits. We can also approach this in a different way, which would be with this quantum state modulation approach. And in this case, instead of mapping the amplitudes of the audio samples directly into the probability amplitudes of the qubits, what we do instead is using additional qubits to encode the amplitudes. So per audio sample, which has an amplitude and a time tag, we would be using the amplitude qubit and the time qubit, and then superposing that, because remember that we are on the superposition indexing. This would be a multi-qubit state instead of an probability amplitude modulation, and that's why we call it a state modulation. Just to briefly go a little bit deeper, we can encode more aspects of the sound samples and the sound audio encoding using these approaches. For example, let's say we want to encode channels as well. We can do that. We can use extra qubits or extra parameters within the qubits to encode information about the channels as well and make it multi-channel audio. So you can see how we are step by step coming from the digital world ideas into the quantum computing side of things, or in a quantum computing interpretation of things. So the quantum audio package, as I said, is open source. All of the documentation is out there in GitHub. You have also demos. You have Python notebooks and demos on the GitHub page that you can use to explore the encodings and the concepts. And if you download the package, you explore it, or you try different things with it, please send us questions and reviews and engage with us, because we are super down to answering to all of you. And you might be wondering, okay, so I download this, but what do I do with it? I encode the audio, but what do I do with it? That's exactly what I am doing with my thesis at the moment. That's the first milestone of my PhD, because the moment you have encoded audio using quantum circuits, you can create signal processing, classical music production and signal processing using this quantum computing encoding. So let's say I want to create a digital effect. I have to think about it in terms of quantum circuits. I have to develop quantum signal processing, which would be crafting the gates, the very gates and the qubits, such that I can implement cool effects with the sound through the quantum computing framework. I think this is very nice. It's very creative, gives a new environment, a new scope for the music that work at the audio signal processing level, at the music production level. But also for musicians, if we build high-level implementations of these circuits, that they can explode to create music. So this is what quantum audio was about, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Give me best of luck for my PhD thesis. If you want to search more information about us, you have here the QR code of Moth Quantum, and we are on social media as well, so you can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and we have a lot of information there on our projects and our artistic collaborations. So thank you all for attending today. Astrid, your turn.
Hear me well? Okay. So, welcome to the introduction to Sphinx and QRC, presented by Moth, proudly presented by Moth. And yeah, so as Charlotte, hello, and I will introduce shortly myself. So I'm Astrid, and I'm currently a creative quantum developer at Moth, working as a part-time while also I'm finishing my MSc Creative Computing course in University of the Arts London. And in my case, I have a huge interest in deciphering quantum computing with the context of spatial interaction. So yeah, with bringing hardwares for like specifically robotics. And previously, I'm from Seoul, South Korea, and I researched a smart neural probe, the small, tiny nanoscale neural sensor in Yonsei University. Also studied something kind of a lot of things in my previous or undergrad years. Also studied astrophysics when I was in Seoul Science High School, so I have a huge interest in physics. Also in like a lot of context of art, like creative writing, films, songwriting, etc., etc. So I think I'm defining myself as a person in between art and science and technology, and that's why I choose this MSc Creative Computing course, and also that's why I joined Moth, because I saw the possibility and this awesome opportunity in Moth Quantum. And actually, like about a month ago, I threw the world's first quantum computing festival in our school, UAL, called UAL Kisuke 4 Festival. You can access to that website, so you can see what was happening in like a month ago. And also we hosted James's talk in UAL. Also there's Atia's showcase in that quantum rave. It was such a brilliant time working with our students across UAL, because we got such a vibrant course all across those 6 campuses, including Creative Computing Institute, where I'm studying at. So yes, it was such an interesting moment. And so what am I doing? I will shortly just showcase what am I doing in my master's thesis. So I am combining physical computing with posthumanism, also in the context of quantum mechanics, quantum computing, within bringing those anthropocentric movements, which is petting something, and curiosity, and posthumanism, quantum computing, they are blurring the conventional strict division between humans and non-humans. And through physical computing, quantum computing is bringing the world's tiniest basic spatial interaction to our physical world. So you can actually find the Moth Quantum GitHub, and there's the code repository MicroMoth, and I developed a first quantum computing library dedicated only for microcontrollers called MicroMoth for Arduino. You can use it, you can download it, and for example, using Bella board, building your own physical quantum synthesizer. That would be one of the idea, but you can do much more. And this is the brief sketch and installation about it. And first things first, move on to Sphinx. Not that one. This Sphinx the Moth. So what's Sphinx? Sphinx is the world's first quantum-powered music generator. It's created from Moth. And there's the second definition, which I will show you after all of the introductions. What do you mean quantum-powered? So Sphinx is generating music using the technique called QRC, quantum reservoir computing, which brings all of those quantum awesomeness for effective, creative music generating process. So, brief reminder, friendly reminder of current generative classical AI models. What are they doing? Of course, they are using input data, and there's a black box of training, and okay, the evaluation is good. Let's post it on somewhere like Hugging Space, for example. Model, there's model that people can use, and yeah, which is delivering well-developed algorithm which detect musical features well. And yeah, so I will just showing the previous slides into the detailed diagrams like this. So dragging data from dataset, and there must be a pattern inside of those data. So feeds data to the training process and find the relevance and all of the evaluation process, all of the optimization process. It will try to make like lots of algorithms, and we will pick one, and it will be a model, good selected model. But the reality is, I just showed you the one barrel of dataset, but actually you need a huge barrel of dataset to train the classical generative AI out there. And this is just an example that I quickly captured from the internet, like, for example, 1 trillion parameters, wow. And secondly, like, you need to literally scrap tons of data out there to create the generative model, which sounds quite sad as an artist. Reality number 2, massive energy consumption. As you already know, climate change. We are hunting by the climate change, and sadly, yeah. So yeah, the world's data centers are using ever more electricity, etc., etc., etc. Briefly in mind. And reality number 3, music is more than a sequential data. We put our emotions, we put our creativities, our efforts, our thoughts, everything is inside of those like precious records, like precious music of our creation. It's more than a sequential data. We should bring something new. We should bring something more natural to represent those semantics of music. So that's why we are using QRC, quantum reservoir computing again. I think it's the nature's way of encoding high-dimensional logics, high-dimensional semantics into something. So what's reservoir computing? So reservoir computing is using the untrained nodes to bring out all of those semantics onto the high-dimensional space. So also it's training the output layer only, which I will shortly talk about it later. And yeah, also it's inspired by nature's complex dynamics. And of course, bringing quantum. How? So starting from the classical stage, of course, bringing the data set, and data inside this data set, we will chunk all of those data down like this and create these discrete elements like this, all of those chunk building blocks for Sphinx model. And yeah, so they are finding the global/local structures from the data. And what should we do with it? We will bring those onto the quantum stage. So ideation. Music is, as you know, I think music is data which evolves through time, obviously, and data which has high-dimensional features inside of it, like our emotion, our thoughts, our intentions, etc. And the solution is using quantum state evolution and tracks all of those semantics into like using unitary evolution operator. They will track all of those dynamic systems of our thoughts, of all of those music data out there. So yeah, so we can sneak peek the improvement number 1 here. It won't lose the connection between all of those complex musical semantics, which also means memory improvement. And yeah, so music is also the subtle structure with freedom of creativity. So freedom of creativity is also super important for music generation because we want to be given some ideas from the generated music. And it will give some ideas, that's great. And how? The system is dynamic itself. The system itself is dynamic. So it is feasible for music generation. And so here's the whole workflow for training. And here it is, memory, all of those memories. Of course, there should be a storage for memory, which it will track the semantics between the past and the future, and also, yeah. And there should be an encoded data array from our training data set, obviously. So it will all of those data semantics, they will be mapped onto the probability vectors in those complex dynamic reservoir, which could be mapped to the non-discrete high-dimensional space. And it will be fed into the thing called untrainable ansatz, which is a reservoir structure. And here's the sneak peek of improvement number 3. Those ansatz already has a complex dynamic data structure, which means that all of those training process from classical generative AI for creating a dynamic structure, it's unnecessary. There's already a dynamic out there, so we can use it. We can actually use it. So the training process is incredibly lightweight. And of course, classical measurement, and there should be a trainable linear output layer will be produced. Over here. So it already has dynamic flow. So it can only train those linear output layer, which feed it onto the untrainable ansatz over and over again, and all of those linear layers will be updated and will feed again, and boom, all of those results is mapped onto the output layer through the dynamic structure, so that it won't lose any memories within the repetitive training process. And one of the examples of ansatz over there, like using lots of rotation gates, etc., and parameterized unitary blocks over there, following the probability distribution. And we are effectively using quantum awesomeness, superposition, entanglement, decoherence for representing all of those complex semantics. So there's improvement number 4. It requires extremely small training data, which it can effectively mapping all of those variety of music styles out there onto this. So we won't need those 1 trillion parameters. And yes, that's the advantage. And obviously there will be a decoded track will be generated, and based on the QRC sequence, it will make music. Okay. So I think Sphinx is the music generation tool with small data set, release more effective and powerful result. And I will show you how can you do that with some demo stages of Sphinx. Here, for example, the VST plugin format. And you can actually use this in the Logic Pro, and I will quickly show you the video of it. Anyway, here's the short working mechanism of the VST plugin, and let's watch a demo. So quickly escaping the PowerPoint and dragging this onto the screen. I cannot see the green dot. Now I can see the green dot and just play it. So pick a style and rotating the familiarity parameter. For example, we are using the jazz track, and it will generate. There will be a sound, by the way, don't worry. And it's playing the generated music using Logic Pro's music data. And this is our signature test track, Mission Impossible. So it's picking up all of those separated MIDI track from our example for our intention. It's generating the music based on the parameters that we can actually tweak. And I will talk about the parameter after this. Okay, let's move back to the slides. Where's the mouse cursor? And yep, we watched the demo. And so example number 2, the standalone Python program of Sphinx. You can see lots of parameters over there, and those parameters can be separated into 2 categories. Number 1, quantum creativity parameter over there, rotation and shots. They can add some variety of generated tracks, and yeah, add structured randomness to our model so that artists can free in exploring all of those possibilities of generated music out there with all those quantum parameters. And there should be a classical creativity parameter called temperature, and it's tuning the variable called model confidence. So we can actually explore around all of those QRC reservoir structure inside of it with tweaking these parameters and playing the samples, etc., etc. It can also print out with the checkbox show circuit. Anyway, that's the new functionality. And so, as the reminder of Sphinx, number 1, the world's first quantum-powered music generator created by Moth, and secondly, I think, Sphinx is an ethical music creation tool which supports our creativity, artist creativity with quantum technology. And one more thing. And Sphinx also actually has the good possibility for game creation, game development, which is procedural generation, for example, for building a terrain for your game stage, level stage. And this is actually a good example created by James, Super Mario level tester. It's actually created from Sphinx, of those Sphinx sequence. And yep, thank you. And scan the QR code for the people on YouTube. Scan your monitor, and yeah, keep in touch on our social media. And thank you for listening.
So if anyone has any questions about any of the presentations or wants to have a discussion, we could entertain a couple now and then also outside afterwards. So yeah, Carl.
So what's the idea with Sphinx? You want to connect it to a real quantum computer hardware?
Oh.
Should I take the microphone?
Yeah, this one.
It's just for the live stream.
And Maria, why don't you come up as well? Yeah, maybe we should...
So what's the idea with Sphinx? Do you want to connect it eventually to a real quantum computer hardware?
So we have already run experiments on IQM's 5-qubit device. At the moment, we're predominantly using simulators, but the idea would be with Sphinx, with quantum reservoir computing, to trial it on multiple hardware options. But in the longer term as well, with generative applications that aren't necessarily going to always be using quantum reservoir computing, but other families of algorithms. Absolutely, yes. I mean, I think at this time, there's a really great consensus within the quantum industry that we're, 2026, 100 logical qubits and various other milestones that are being predicted along the way. I mean, the goal is with all of our applications to test them on real hardware when and benchmark against classical equivalents. But for now, the great thing about Sphinx in particular is that it actually works incredibly well on simulators, which means it's today very accessible to any musician who would want to access it without necessarily the hardware access. Right?
I agree, but in the end, you want to have as the engine a real quantum computer, right?
Yeah,
in whatever form.
That would be the goal. Yeah, eventually.
Okay, thank you.
Anything to add? Yeah.
I think that's all. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? I had those questions on screen earlier. Maybe one to take off live stream, because it could end up being a long conversation. But I'd love to, especially with so many sort of pioneers of quantum music in the room. Paolo last night said, that for those on the live stream, there was a concert here last night with a real variety of music that was using quantum computing methods and tools in various different ways. And you mentioned that, what you really wanted to showcase last night was that there is no one quantum music genre. A question I'm sure a lot of us in the room get a lot is, how does quantum sound different? And of course, the answer is, well, the human spectrum of hearing is between certain limits, and quantum computer isn't going to suddenly change the spectrum of hearing you can listen to and produce a sound that you couldn't have ever heard before. But of course the approach and the process is different. Now, my provocation to you, Paolo, and to the rest of the room is that yes, a synth, as you've seen, a quantum synth can be used to make various different genres of music, and a generative music application like that like Sphinx can do the same. But do you think there will be an emergent aesthetic or several emergent aesthetics that can be described as quantum aesthetics or sounds or genres? Not because quantum necessarily creates different sounds, but because the process and also the conceptual basis for those new creations is rooted in quantum mechanics, quantum phenomenon, and a completely new approach to musical composition or indeed other creative practices. So, curious if anyone has any immediate thoughts, otherwise we can take it outside for a chat in the courtyard. Okay, I'm hearing crickets. So let's take it outside.
Yeah. Thanks, Harry, for the provocation. It's a really interesting question. I don't know, maybe just to also counter-provoke, I might say in a sense that anything that was generated, inspired by quantum, is being done for 100 years, let's say. So quantum aesthetics very much exists. So maybe the question would be more like, which kind of aesthetics is emerging from quantum computing and from quantum technologies? And are those aesthetics really quantum aesthetics, or is it a new name? I mean, I have seen definitely many interesting examples of new aesthetics that could potentially, become a group that we can really call, well, this set of piece of artwork were generated because quantum technologies exist, the new quantum technologies, not the old. But it's really an interesting provocation.
Yeah. Thank you, Paolo. I could continue here, but I think let's take this one outside. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and to anyone who did tune into the live stream, or maybe is watching this retroactively. Thank you for listening to our presentations. Thank you for hosting us here. Thank you to Artos House. Thank you to Paolo, who has been extraordinary in his effort here to put on this series of events. A big round of applause to him. I mean, seriously, I've known Paolo for, I think, the best part of 2 years. Was one of the first people I met in the quantum music research field. And he's not only been, the source of a lot of our inspiration, and in fact, a lot of our technologies that we're developing, from quantum audio to Q-Synth. He's an incredible researcher. So I have deep respect for him, but also it's very rare that you see someone who is so dedicated to making something happen that they literally will do anything to make it happen. I really am impressed. So thank you, Paolo, and thank you to everyone for attending. And we have some performances coming up in about half an hour, I think. So people in person, please stick around. Thanks.
So if the YouTube is still on, just to mention to them, just in an hour we're gonna go to you're gonna open a different link. Okay, it's a different live for the Qubit Echoes concert, but it's in the same channel. So look around, stick around, and see you soon. Thank you.